Live from clickorlando.com, this is News 6 at 5:30. This is a News 6 Plus takeover. Here now is Chief Meteorologist Tom Sorrells with Talk to Tom.
Hello, everyone, and welcome back to Talk to Tom. I'm Chief Meteorologist Tom Sorrells from the powerful WKMG News 6. Talk to Tom is going to be a weekly edition here on Channel 6. We're going to do it every Thursday between 5:30 and 6. I can't thank you enough for being here. This is, as I've told you before, a dream come true, a big show. Talk to Tom started as just a little social media experiment during the hurricane season of 2004, built into a Facebook show, and now it's a real, honest-to-goodness produced show right here on News 6. So what we're going to do today is we're going to talk about some very different stuff. We're going to be speaking with a shark expert from OCEARCH, not only about the weather, which is my favorite topic, but also its impact on sharks. And we're going to be talking about how sharks can actually sense and predict where hurricanes are going.
The little ones that are in shallow areas, they know when a storm is coming and they get out of harm's way. Yeah,
that's
pretty amazing.
Awesome. But first, we're going to start by answering your questions. That's what the whole program is built around. If you want to submit a question, all you have to do is go to clickorlando.com/talk-to-tom. Our first question today comes to us from our friend Jeff Barris. Jeff says he wants to know, why do hurricanes on the Gulf Coast cause waves to be high on the East Coast? Well, Jeff, this is kind of a great question because it gives me a chance to dissertate on hurricanes not being a point. I stress this all the time during hurricane season. The hurricane that we're tracking, when we're tracking the center of the storm, oh my gosh, it's located here. We're talking about the eye, where the eye is going to go. We're not really talking about all of the impacts of the hurricane. And a hurricane itself will have a huge footprint. If you're new to Central Florida or to hurricane areas, if you've never been here before through hurricane season, then maybe you don't really understand. But where we're tracking the hurricane, we're talking about where the eye and the worst of the damage is going to be. But the big footprint extends out 5, 6, 800, maybe 1,000 miles from the center. So it can be impacts way far away from the center of the storm. And in this case, your question relates to the eye of the system. A hurricane being in the Gulf, how do we get big waves on the East Coast? Well, remember, what causes a wave is the wind. And we talk about how long that wind has been blowing, how hard that wind has been blowing, and how much water that wind's had to cover. In other words, what is the fetch? We talked about this in an earlier edition of Talk to Tom. Waves are created by the wind. So if you have a dot of a hurricane over in the Gulf of Mexico, the wind coming into our East Coast is usually either from the east or the northeast. And that was the case during Hurricane Ian. Ian was coming into the Gulf Coast area around Fort Myers. And as long as it was in the Gulf Coast, most of our wind was howling from the east-northeast. That produced large pounding surf on our East Coast because you had wind blowing pretty hard, tropical storm strength or better, for more than a couple of days over a long body of water. So there you go. There's your answer. As long as the wind is coming in from the east-northeast, like that around a storm system in the Gulf, you're going to get big waves, big wind, big surf, bad erosion. And that's what we've been living with now on our East Coast since October. And really since November. It's been a mess. All right, let's move along. Second question on Talk to Tom this afternoon is from our friend John. He wrote in saying, I'm a ham operator and have antenna all around the house to keep my copper wire grounded, to keep the house grounded. And the question is this enough to keep my house from burning down? I think you mean, John, the case of lightning. Is that copper wiring around your house with the antenna enough to keep your house protected from lightning? Does that act as a lightning protection system? And the answer is yes and no. I mean, I think it does do a lot, goes a long way to acting like a lightning rod. You get all the antennas up because lightning does seek out metal. It does tend to seek out the highest object. And so if you have big antennae sticking up around your house, boom, 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 it can strike any of those antennas, run through the copper, go right into the ground. Does not guarantee that it won't strike another part of your house and set it afire. So yes, it's a good step forward. I think any lightning rod protection that you have is a chance you'll do better. I don't think it totally protects you ever. I don't think we have anything man-made that can protect your house totally ever. Lightning rods are great. Sometimes they do not work. Sometimes your house will still get struck on the roof somewhere besides the lightning rod, and sometimes there will be a fire associated with that. Most of the time, most of the lightning damage we get here in Central Florida is associated with lightning. Lightning will strike a tree in your yard, come in and boom, maybe run up the wiring into your house and knock out your TV. Not a direct strike, but an indirect strike, which will really tear you up. Okay, hope that answered that question. Let's move along to Joe. Jovici, or is it VC? I think it's Joe VC. Wants to know, I think I know Joe. I think this is Joe from Flagler County. I think Joe's a big part of Talk to Tom all the time live on Facebook. I think this is Joe from the Knights of the Inferno. Hey, Joe. Joe wants to know, how often is the radar on the Pinpoint Weather app updated? Okay, great question. If you've never downloaded the News 6 Weather app, you need to, because it is like having radar right there in your pocket. You can download that from your app store. You do all kinds of things with it. It works worldwide, they tell me, except for China. It does not work in China. It does work in Europe. I used it several times on a couple of trips I've done over there. It does work riding down the Harpeth River in Nashville, and it does work in San Diego. It works everywhere around the globe except for China. We update the radar on that app. It's set to go through our system every 5 minutes. So if you look at it, Joe, and you step it forward, it'll back up. If you put it on the rotating radar, it will back up a couple of hours and run in 5 minute steps all the way through. It takes about 5 minutes for a radar sweep to complete when the radar is going, unless we're in severe weather mode. The guys at the Weather Service will kick it up into severe weather mode. It'll go fast and what we call quick scan, but it normally takes about 5 minutes for it to complete a sweep, and that is pushed right out to your telephone. And I'm telling you, it's free. It's like having radar in your pocket, no matter where you are, no matter where you go, unless you're able to travel in China. So download it today if you could. You could download that app anytime from your app store. And while you have it, right there in the lower right-hand corner is a little thing called Pin It. You can pin your photos to our Pin It. Will come to us on our website, and I also use those on my iPad on TV. You could have radar in your pocket, and the 7-day forecast is there. And any watch and warning that is issued also comes direct to your phone, boom, instantly through that app. And again, it's free. It's absolutely 100% free radar in your pocket on the go, no matter where you go. So download it today if you could, and submit your questions on there. clickorlando.com/talk-to-Tom. Coming up, we're going to talk to an expert about the weather's impacts on sharks.
There are shark species that migrate across the entire North Atlantic Ocean and back in every year. In the case of the white shark, they go from as far south as the eastern Gulf of Mexico in the wintertime to as far north as Newfoundland and the Grand Banks of Canada.
Sharks, one of my favorite subjects. They migrate up and down our coast. So stay with us on Talk to Tom. The interview is next. Welcome back, everybody, to Talk to Tom. I'm Chief Meteorologist Tom Sorrells. I can't thank you enough for being here. Usually on the Weathercast or Talk to Tom, I'm talking about life on dry land, what the weather's doing in the troposphere, and what it means to you on a day-to-day basis. But weather also has a big impact on the ocean, and the ocean has a big impact on the weather and on you and our life in general. Joining me now is Dr. Bob Hueter. Dr. Bob, welcome to Talk to Tom.
Thanks, Tom. It's great to be with you. And I love that intro, the importance of the ocean in our life. It doesn't matter whether you live on the coast in the Carolinas or in Kansas.
Yeah, I try to tell people all the time. It's very important. I tell people all the time, we worry about how hot it's going to be, how cold it's going to be, but you really need to worry about the fish, because if the fish die, we die. Be careful here, people, with what we're doing. Dr. Bob, talk to me. You mostly focus on one of my favorite subjects. We're talking about sharks today. I've been fascinated by them since I was a child. I think it's one of the most popular things on television is Shark Week that comes out every year. Talk to me about sharks and how they usually interact along our coastline in Florida. How do they travel up and down our coast?
Well, Tom, sharks are a very important part of marine ecosystems. We have about 500 different species of sharks, ranging from little tiny guys that live in the deep sea that no one ever sees to the whale shark, which is a plankton feeder. Right now, my research with OCEARCH is focused on the great white shark. And the role they play in the ocean is critical as an apex predator. The white shark, as well as a number of other shark species, use the coastal waters of North America to move back and forth to spend the summer up north, the winter down south, kind of like our snowbirds here in Florida. And they do a similar thing. And right now they're on their way south, and they're moving down past the Carolinas. Some are already in Florida now, and as far south as the dry tortugas in the eastern Gulf of Mexico.
Okay, so you're talking about them being like the snowbirds. How does the weather affect them? What temperature do they normally figure out, oh my gosh, it's time to go? Or are they doing it based on sunlight?
Great question, because it's both, probably. Day length plays a part, but all these species have different temperature sort of preferences. Mm-hmm. With the white shark, their sort of sweet spot is around the low 60s Fahrenheit water temperature. But they can go into the tropics briefly, and they can go to make deep dives and go down to essentially freezing temperatures for a period of time. They're actually warm-blooded white sharks. They're like us in that way. Very unusual for sharks. So it depends on the species. Other species, we have a very common one called the black-tip shark here in Florida. Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
it's a migratory animal, and they come in large schools. You see them coming down in the fall and then going back in the spring. And they're a little bit more warm. I say warm temperate. The white shark is sort of a cool temperate animal in general.
So the black tips, they like it warm, but the great whites like it cooler. What about other types of sharks? Do they hang out here all the time, or are they all migratory?
They're essentially all migratory to an extent, mm-hmm. but some are more migratory than others. There are shark species that migrate across the entire North Atlantic Ocean and back in every year. In the case of the white shark, they go from as far south as the eastern Gulf of Mexico in the wintertime to as far north as Newfoundland and the Grand Banks of Canada in the summertime. But then you have a species that's very common in Florida called the nurse shark, which is an animal that actually can sit on the bottom, and they move some, but nothing like those other two species.
Yeah, and they're safe, right? The nurse shark is the one that doesn't attack.
It's a very serene animal. Now, if you grab its tail, it's going to turn and bite. They have little tiny teeth. They don't do a whole lot of damage, but sometimes they clamp on and they kind of suck down, and it's very hard to get them off you. So you don't want to do that. You don't want to mess with them.
Yeah, I don't want to mess with any of them, but I do know that the nurse shark is more of well, I would almost call it, it's not the manatee of the shark family, but it's much safer than, say, a tiger shark or a great white. So talk to me about those sharks. You called them the apex predator of the ocean. Are they loners, or do they run in big packs?
They don't have a whole lot of social behavior that we know of, although a lot more research is being done on shark social behavior these days, and what's called personality even. And we're discovering new things. But the white shark, the great white, is a true apex predator. And just like with apex predators on land, like wolves and lions and that sort of thing, you can't have too many of them in one area because they'll compete with each other, and they all need the same kind of food. So they tend to be spread out. They go to similar places, sometimes at different times. That's the way these animals do it, and it makes research on them very challenging, because only at certain times of the year are they concentrated in any kind of numbers. And we found up in Canada, for example, Nova Scotia, in September is a great time to find pretty good numbers of them there. Cape Cod is another place you can work on them, and so on.
Mm-hmm. Okay, talk to me about everyone's big fear. We live here in eastern central Florida, And everyone, we do a news story on it like ad nauseum every year that, oh my gosh, New Smyrna Beach, shark bite, capital of the world. We talk about it all the time. We get a lot of little nibbles out there. People who are coming down to get in the water, what do you want them to know about shark bites, about what you should do in the water when a shark is around, and what your chances really are of being bitten by a shark?
Yeah, well, first of all, Tom, you used the right term. You said shark bite. That's what's happening in a place like New Smyrna Beach. These are not 18-foot great white sharks that are hunting for people and attacking. Unfortunately, sometimes in the press you see, when someone is bitten, you see shark attack at New Smyrna Beach, and it sends the wrong message. So we've been trying to get people to understand that the kind of bites that occur on the east coast of Florida, typically on like a surfer's foot, maybe a swimmer's hand. They tend to be a bite and release by a smaller shark. It's never trivial. I mean, you don't want to get bitten by a shark, period. But these are not attempts to really feed on people. They're usually cases of mistaken identity. So it's just critical that everybody using the ocean realize that it's a wild place. It's like going to a national park and going for a walk, a hike out in the woods. I mean, you've got to know, how to interact with the wildlife properly. You don't want the place to be sterile. You don't want the ocean to be empty of sharks, or because it will be empty of a lot of other things then, and then it's not the ocean at all. It's a swimming pool. So be smart. Observe what you see happening in the ocean. If you see a lot of activity, certainly don't swim where people are fishing. If you see lots of fish and birds diving on fish, that means there's probably a number of things feeding in that area. Don't go swimming there and just wait.
Yeah, I raise my children all the time to know that, hey, when the little fish are coming by, the big fish are going to be here soon. Let's move. So that's a good tip, right?
That's absolutely a good tip, yeah.
Okay.
And also in the summertime, I recommend that people not go swimming in the ocean after as dusk is setting in, and don't go at night and wait till the light's up the next day, because sharks have a certain number of sensory things that they use to discriminate you from what they're really looking for, and at night it's there's less to go by. So but that's only in the summer. In the wintertime, you don't have to worry about it too much, because the sharks that are here are different and they're not as numerous.
Okay, so the bottom line here is if you see the feeder fish, stay away. Wintertime is safer than summer. There's probably no difference from low tide to high tide, is there?
There are some subtle differences, but not enough that you can use it as a rule of thumb in this case. Now that affects our fishing and our research and how when we fish on the tide or not. But in terms of going to the beach, there are some possible correlations, but not enough to have it as a rule.
Okay, I'm running out of time here. I'm down to my last 30 seconds with you. When it comes to telling people about sharks and I could talk to you all day if they'd let me, but my segment's only going to be about 10 minutes long. So any last parting thoughts, anything going on with OCEARCH, anything you want to add here at the end of this conversation?
Well, I'll tell you, Tom, the neatest thing, I think, to tell you and tell your audience is that sharks can actually detect when a hurricane's coming.
Oh.
And they do this and we discovered this in our lab at Mote Marine Laboratory in Sarasota, scientists that were working on sharks when a hurricane came. I don't have time to explain how it happens, but they basically detect the fall in barometric pressure that is transmitted down through the water column, and they get out of shallow areas knowing that a storm is about to turn their habitat upside down. So it's a fascinating thing. It's how they survive. These smaller sharks, the bigger ones, not so important. They go deep, but they can ride things out close to shore. But the little ones that are in shallow areas, they know when a storm is coming and they get out of harm's way. Yeah,
that's
pretty amazing.
Awesome. I've never been told that. The sharks go deep, the small ones get out of Dodge before everything starts to fall apart. Wow. Yeah. Hey, that's fantastic. Hey, Dr. Bob Hueter. I said that correct? Hueter?
Perfect.
All right. I thank you so much for being here on Talk to Tom. Appreciate you joining us for the shark discussion. Hey, you guys at home, thank you for being here too. If you would like to have a question answered right here on Talk to Tom, feel free to log on. clickorlando.com/Talk to Tom. We would love to answer any question that you have. And of course, you can watch us anytime on News 6 Plus.